Oh, hello, this is Tak Cho from Walk with Tak. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. I have a friend, and I will call her Beth for the purpose of this video. She has come from the Ozark area, and she definitely knows how to make a great cornbread. Her cornbread is moist, creamy, and buttery, and I really enjoy it. And she always make it in her 10-inch cast iron skillet. The other night I make a cream and broccoli soup. I decided I'm going to make some cornbread to go with the soup. I have a 13-inch cast iron wok, and I decided that this probably is going to be excellent for making cornbread. The wok clearly has many advantages because of its bowl-shaped size. So you can make different portions of cornbread and they will all turn out okay. I have never made cornbread, in fact, ever before, not to mention make it in a wok. So this will be an exciting adventure for me. So let's go into the kitchen and see what we could do. The first thing I'm going to do is to gather all the ingredients. I have almost everything I have. I started with some all-purpose flour, and then in my pantry I find some cornmeal, and of course I need baking soda for raising the bread, and then I'm also going to use some baking powder as well. This recipe also calls for some sour cream, and I always have some on hand. The recipe also calls for some half and half, but I don't have that, so I'm going to use heavy whipping cream instead. In terms of oil, I'm going to use a combination of butter and canola oil. And lastly, it requires 2 eggs. Now I have everything ready, and I'm going to assemble the batter. I'm going to use 1 cup of finely ground yellow cornmeal. To this, I'm going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour. Together, this will make a fairly large portion of cornbread. For leavening agents, I'm going to use a combination of baking powder and baking soda in a ratio of 2:1, which is something I find that it worked for me in the past. Again, based on my past experience, that I know I will need some salt, but I don't need very much, so I put in about maybe a pinch of salt. For cornbread, I know that I don't want it to be too sweet, so I add about 2 tablespoons of sugar. Lastly, the recipe calls for a half teaspoon of paprika. So now everything I need for the dry portion of this mixture, I have put it in already. So I'm going to mix it up, and then I'm going to make the wet portion of this batter. In a separate mixing bowl, I'm going to first start with some heavy whipped cream. As I mentioned, I don't have half and half, which is what it called for. And then I'm going to add about 1 quarter cup, which is probably about 3 tablespoons of sour cream. The whipped cream as well as the sour cream will make the cornbread more moist and rich. For this cornbread, I'm going to use 2 eggs. Again, eggs provide protein to the bread, which actually make the bread more tender or moist. For oil, I'm going to use 3 tablespoons of canola oil. The recipe calls for butter, but based on my experience, this will work very well. So I'm going to mix it up as much as I could. I decided at this point maybe it's a little bit too thick because of the whipping cream as well as the sour cream. So I add some more water to make the mixture with more fluid. Okay, now I'm ready to add this fluid mixture to my flour mixture. As you can see that initially this looked kind of a little bit too thick. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to thin it down a little bit by adding some more water to it. You probably noticed that how I make this batter is not based on strict recipes. I add each individual component with a lot of adjustment and modification in my mind. The reason is that I draw on the template that I have known from the past in making something similar to this. So finally, I'm going to add the frozen corn, and I did not thaw out the corn. I know that when it's thawed out, there will be additional moisture added to the batter. So I will make the adjustment accordingly to make sure that the texture that I have will eventually account for that extra moisture that I produce by the thawing of the corn. Next, I'm going to start get my wok ready. I'm going to spray my wok with PAM, and I'm going to use my Chicago oven, the 13-inch cast iron wok. I really enjoy using the wok for baking because of their heat holding capacity. I pour the batter into the wok, and it's filled about maybe 1/3 way up from the bottom of the wok. The wok actually has a tremendous advantage to use for baking because it can be scaled up from baking something relatively small to baking something that for a huge portion. Until recently, I never thought of using the wok for baking, but the more I have done this, the more I realize that how wonderful it is. Since we are close to Thanksgiving, and cranberry is such a Thanksgiving traditional ingredient, so I decided that I'm going to add cranberry to the batter. I'm going to only cover small regions of the batter, and then I use the sponge to push them into the batter. This way that if my wife do not like to have cranberry, she can enjoy the other part of the cornbread. I've already turned on the oven and set the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I tap the wok gently to make sure everything settles properly, and then I put it into the oven. I'm going to bake the cornbread for about 20 minutes. At the meantime, I thawed out half stick of butter. I took the cornbread out from the oven and I poured the butter over the surface of the cornbread. I then use a Teflon brush to spread the butter over the entire surface of the cornbread. I then put the wok back into the oven and I bake it for another 10 minutes. And then I took the cornbread out of the oven and it looks really quite nice. The cornbread takes on a nice golden color as what it's supposed to be. I probably could have browned it a little bit more, but I'm afraid that I might burn it too much. To make sure the cornbread do not stick to the bottom of the wok, I was able to shake it free easily. I decided I'm going to serve the cornbread in the cast iron wok because the cast iron wok has such a beautiful form and shape. It makes a very nice presentation. So I'm going to cut the cornbread as I would cut a piece of pie into different wedges. Okay, now it is ready to serve. As you can see that the cornbread has a very moist texture, and in this part you can see where the cranberry were added. Before I went into the kitchen to make the cornbread, I studied her recipe very carefully. I tried to figure out what are the essential and critical steps in the process. And then I decided what are the steps that I could make modifications and adjustments accordingly. In many ways, what I'm trying to do is to create a cornbread template that I could use from now on. So when I am in the kitchen making the cornbread, you probably notice that some ingredients I measure carefully, but other ingredients I make a lot of leeway in terms of how much that I add to the process. The cornbread turned out to be excellent as advertised. More importantly, during this process, I think I fully understand how it works. I already tried to introduce some modifications to the cornbread by adding cranberry to part of the cornbread. So next time when I make the cornbread again, I can make further adjustments in terms of who I'm going to cook for and how I would like it to turn out. In many ways, this video is also a demonstration of template-based cooking. In this particular case, is how to create a template for your repertoire. And one thing I learned from developing this template is the importance of adding sour cream to create moisture in the cornbread. So if you like cornbread, I would suggest you to give this a try. It truly is an excellent cornbread. Of course, this means that you like cornbread that are moist, buttery, and creamy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you next time.